Today I'm starting a new Bible study. This is going to tackle Bible prophecy. Now, a book that I really wanted to get into is the book of Daniel, because there are so many specific prophecies in the book of Daniel, yet so many people get these prophecies wrong. So I do think it is worth studying and worth diving into. More specifically, we're going to get into the Daniel 9 prophecies. Now, if you're going to read alongside me, I do not recommend you read from one of the newer translations because a lot of them just butcher the text. So I recommend you go to the interlinear Hebrew/Aramaic Bible, just transliteration, which is what I am showing you here. I'm also going to try to make these things less complicated because it can be a little complicated and hard for some people to follow along, but at the very least I am giving you the references so you can read this for yourselves. Anyways, this prophecy begins in verse 24 after Gabriel speaks to Daniel. There are a couple of things that are highlighted in this prophecy. For example, in most translations, this is known as the 70 weeks, but literally it is 77s, which is mostly interpreted to be about 490 years. Each week just represents a set of 7 years. There are first the 7 weeks, then the 62 weeks, and then one final week, which would make it 7 extra years. The prophecy talks about the restoration and rebuilding of Jerusalem, because remember, in the time of Daniel, there was the Babylonian exile, meaning that as punishment for their sins, Jews were kicked out of Israel, and thus they had to live in these pagan nations such as Babylon, and the temple was also destroyed alongside Jerusalem. So the prophecy talks about the restoration and rebuilding of Jerusalem well before that happened. It also talks about the anointed one, aka the Messiah or Mashiach, and then it talks about the cutting off of Messiah or Mashiach, which is old speak of saying like he will be killed. And then it talks about the destruction of the new temple, aka the Second Temple, which did happen in 70 AD. And the last one is interpreted to be a covenant, which is established after a final week, which is 7 years. Now, I am going to make myself a little smaller so you can read through all of this. But Jesus literally shows up exactly when Daniel prophesies that the anointed one or the Mashiach is supposed to show up. On top of that, if you read the third bullet point, the prophecy states that the Messiah or Mashiach will be cut off and have nothing. That is verse 26. Now, what happened to Jesus? Well, he was crucified, and it appeared to people at the moment that he didn't fulfill his duty. Because remember, Jews were expecting the Messiah to be a military leader, but Jesus came to bring a whole new teaching, a whole new understanding of what it means to be human. So if we take the prophecy from Daniel by what it's actually trying to say, Jesus shows up when Daniel predicts the Messiah, the anointed one, to show up. And then after that, Jesus is cut off, aka crucified. And it appears at the moment when he was being crucified that he did not fulfill his role in the interpretation of, the Jewish mindset. But then guess what? He is resurrected. He comes back. And then even before that, he announces that he will return again to finish establishing his kingdom. But then what's really interesting is that Daniel also prophesied that the second temple will be destroyed. Mind you, Daniel was living at a time when the first temple was already destroyed, and there wasn't even a thought that a second temple would even be built. So Daniel's already saying, well, the second temple will be destroyed, which is huge because that literally happens in 70 AD. These people here put CE, but it's actually AD. So there is a huge time gap over hundreds of years between the prophecy of Daniel and when Jesus shows up, and then when Jesus is cut off, and then when the temple is destroyed. There is zero chance Daniel could have just guessed this because it's so specific, and this wouldn't be in the mind of a Jewish person. Every Jewish person, every Israelite at that time was longing for a second temple. Yet you have here Daniel saying that the second temple will be destroyed. This is what many people know as the abomination of desolation. I have listened to many Messianic Jews who were once Orthodox Jews, meaning that they practiced Judaism, the Talmudic Judaism, And they say that once they read the New Testament for the first time, because many of them never did, it all seems so clear. Either Prophet Daniel was a liar and a false prophet, or Prophet Daniel was correct and he prophesied about the coming of the Messiah, Jesus, Yeshua HaMashiach. He also got the Second Temple's destruction correctly in his prophecy. And he got the crucifixion event correct hundreds of years before it happened. So I am simply trying to explain the prophecy and make the argument that yes, Daniel was correct and he is a true prophet and Jesus is Messiah. He is Lord. He is the Mashiach. But I also encourage you guys to truly study this for yourselves. Again, I would avoid these newer modern translations because what they do is that they take these really complicated passages and they try to modernize words around it, and it just makes it more complicated. And the NIV, the NIV, the New International Version, is guilty of doing that in many cases. So I don't know how many other translations get it wrong, but I would just be careful around that. But I would still encourage you to study it nonetheless. Anyways, that is it for this Bible study. There will be more coming soon. Maybe some more from the book of Daniel, maybe some from Isaiah. There is one really good one in Zechariah that I wanted to get into, which is super specific. So we'll see what I do next. You can also let me know in the comments what you want me to tackle.